Coming to paperback and e-readers, John Haynes' Godbreaker. The man who rules the world takes on the Asgardian god of thunder in this action-packed, all-new John Haynes series adventure. Pre-order your copy of John Haynes' Godbreaker at online booksellers today. Are superhero movies hurting the medium of film in America? That's a critical question I have to ask because it seems like your Hollywood movie studios have become so obsessed with getting box office from superhero movies that they have lost focus on creativity as related to the medium of filmmaking. And as a result of movie studios mostly focusing on only producing superhero movies like the movies Disney produces for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the superhero films like Black Adam that studios like Warner Brothers produce, it seems like Hollywood has lost its way creatively, and the medium of film has gained some sort of tunnel vision where all many studios only focus on are producing superhero movies or movies related to franchises like Star Wars and other popular characters, and are no longer focused on trying to create new and unique stories as related to the medium of film. And that's really a sad thing as related to movies, which have really, as I see it, aren't as creative as they were back in the 1980s or even the 1990s. And instead of us getting unique movies that tell very compelling stories, what we seem to be getting these days are a whole group of superhero movies that don't even feel unique or distinct anymore. No, in many cases, they feel like they have been manufactured right off of an assembly line, similar to the way General Motors goes out here and manufactures cars, or a company like PepsiCo goes out here and manufactures bottles of Pepsi-Cola. And these films don't have any sort of personality, heart, or voice, and even worse, you don't even get to see the fingerprints of a filmmaker and see how they tell their own story in their own unique way. And many filmmakers, like Martin Scorsese, have said that superhero films are not cinema, and I have to agree with them because cinema is about giving the audience a unique experience and telling a unique and distinct story, and that's not what we're getting these days with superhero movies. No, with superhero movies, it's all about building a larger universe, and what's sadly about these building the larger universes is that we don't get immersed into a unique world as related to filmmaking. No, what we get is another episode in an ongoing soap opera, and in that soap opera, we watch these movies for a minute, but those movies sadly do not resonate with the viewer like iconic films such as The Godfather, Sunset Boulevard, Marty, Rocky, and many other classic films. No, when you look at movies like Sunset Boulevard, Marty, Rocky, and many other films, those films resonate with you because the filmmaker has gone out here and put their own unique fingerprints on that film with each shot and told their own unique story. And as they've told their own unique story, they have told a story that resonates with people because they identify and relate to the characters and they relate to their struggles. But we don't really see that with a superhero movie where all we get is one episode and then it moves on to the next. And you really start to feel indifferent about these superhero movies because there's nothing really special about these superhero movies anymore. Now, back in 2008, when the Marvel's Cinematic Universe started to really get up off the ground, these films still had some resonance because films like Iron Man had a distinct feel, had a distinct heart and soul, and Robert Downey Jr. gave a very compelling performance in a story that presented Tony Stark as a human character in that first issue of Iron Man movie. And in that first Iron Man movie, we got to meet a person who had no connection to people, and it was the armor that allowed him to connect with people and really learn to care about people and see them as human beings. And that's one of the core components of a great film, is seeing not only the hero's journey, but seeing the hero become connected to other people. And unfortunately, we don't get to see the hero get to connect with people anymore in superhero movies, because most superhero movies have turned these characters into caricatures of themselves. And as these characters have become caricatures of themselves, they have become flat, one-dimensional characters who are just there to move the plot forward, and they're not there to tell their own unique story. And that's one of the things that frustrates filmmakers like Martin Scorsese, Ridley Scott, and many others, because when they go out here and they want to create a film, they want to create a film that resonates with the audience. They want them to get to know these characters. They want them to see their story as unique and not as a cog in a corporate machine that is just there to generate revenue. And that's sadly what many superhero films have become. And as they have become just another money-making cash grab, the studios have become addicted to making these superhero movies, and that has really hurt creativity, because I'm still wondering, when am I going to see Hollywood go out here and promote a movie with some human characters, a standard regular commercial movie like we used to get in the 80s? Because I remember in the 80s there was some balance. Yes, we had movies like 1989's Batman, but we also had romantic comedies like When Harry Met Sally, and we had fun fantasy comedies like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. I mean, there was a variety of films in '89 when I was a teenager, but I don't see any of that variety anymore. All I see are the studios just pumping out superhero movie after superhero movie, and sadly that has prevented these films from becoming as special as 2002's Spider-Man, 2004's Spider-Man 2, or 2008's Iron Man, films that are just great films overall because they have a fantastic story, or films like 1989's Batman, which even after 35 years old, Tim Burton's visuals just are so powerful that you just want to just watch that film, because he just does, there's just great work that the late Anton Furst does with color and imagery, with the direction of photography, and it just is a beautiful film. But we don't get any of that, because what happens with Hollywood's over-reliance on superhero films is that these films are just, again, manufactured like they're off an assembly line. And because they're manufactured like they're off an assembly line, they have no personality, they have no voice, they have no heart. And because they don't have any personality, voice, or heart, or soul, what happens is that they're just pumped out here, and there's nothing really special about these movies, and people just watch them and they don't really resonate with the viewer. All it does is build anticipation for the next installment, and all it does is build Hollywood's anticipation for the next box office, and sadly it's just sucked all of the creativity out of movie making. It sucked all of the imagination out of movie making. It sucked all of the fun out of movie making. And seeing a fun movie like Top Gun Maverick is an exception and not the rule. And that's what's really sad about today's Hollywood, which is a complete mess due to the Telecommunications Bill of 1996, which allowed your media companies to be able to buy more than one TV studio, more than one TV station, more than one radio station, and more than one publishing company. And as media has consolidated into 4 oligarchs, what has happened is all of the creativity has been sucked out of American media, and the medium of film is just a heartless production with absolutely no heart and no soul. And all they do is manufacture these superhero movies because superhero movies are safe at the box office, and because they're looking for a guaranteed profit margin on these films. They just make superhero movies, and they make really bad superhero movies because the visuals are all generic, and to cover up a weak screenplay and weak visuals, what many Hollywood studios today, like Disney and Warner Brothers Discovery, do is overcompensate for weak stories by going out here and just layering on heavy amounts of CGI. But a great filmmaker doesn't even want to use CGI. I know if I were to make a Temptation of John Haynes movie or a Spellbound movie, I wouldn't want to use any CGI. No, I want to use practical special effects, because seeing things that are just practical and human, this gives the film a personality. This gives the film its own unique heart and spirit, and it allows a filmmaker to really put their tips on a film and put their fingerprint on a film, and that's something that you just can't get with today's movies. Now, your Quentin Tarantino said that there is a war between the superhero movie and filmmaking, and I have to agree with him on that point, because it seems like all people want to do is just go out here and watch these superhero movies to see the next installment, and that's a war with filmmakers, because filmmakers want to go out here and tell a great story using pictures, and all superhero movies want to do is just give you generic shots. And that's not even something we do in comic books, because when you're writing a comic, and I've written comics, you want to be able to create panels that really pop. You really want to create pages that are really dynamic. But with today's modern superhero movie, it's a artificial, manufactured experience that does not give us any of the distinctions of comic books that we used to get in films, again, like 1989's Batman, which felt a lot like a Jim Aparo Batman comic, 2002 Spider-Man, which felt like a Steve Ditko or John Romita comic come to life, or 2008's Iron Man, which felt like a David Michelini, Bob Layton comic book come to life. And that's because the filmmakers at the time, guys like Sam Raimi, Jon Favreau, and Tim Burton, were passionate filmmakers, and as passionate filmmakers, they wanted to give you something special. Same thing with the late Richard Donner with the Superman, the movie. He had the theme of verisimilitude in his film as related to Superman, and that really gave us a hopeful, optimistic character, but we're not getting anything hopeful as related to today's superhero movies. And as I'm watching many of these superhero movies again today, they have no imagination whatsoever, and it's really hurting the entire medium of film, because the studios seem like they're coke addicts and they're addicted to box office, and because they're addicted to box office, it seems like all they want to do is see that billion-dollar number come up like a gambler or a crack addict. They want to see that billion-dollar number come up, so what they look to do is make a superhero movie hoping to get a guaranteed box office, when it was never about the box office at all. It was about telling a great story, and if you tell a great story, you're gonna get a bigger box office than what we're currently getting as related to superhero movies, which are at a point of diminishing return. Now, the superhero movie is at a point of diminishing return, as I see it, because the audience is burnt out, and the audience is burnt out on the superhero movie because they're seeing the same movie over and over again, and they're not seeing any sort of creativity or imagination as related to what's presented on screen. And because they're not seeing anything creative or imaginative presented on screen, they don't have an incentive to go out here and make a movie a billion-dollar box office champ because there's nothing really special there. No, every movie looks and feels the same, and that's really hurting the overall medium of film, and it's really preventing really good stories from being told. And when I look at the state of affairs as related to the superhero movie, sadly, it reminds me a lot of what happened in this country in the late 1960s when the audience of baby boomers weren't interested in watching war movies and weren't interested in watching epics like the Ten Commandments or watching all of these musicals that Hollywood was producing. No, the audience had changed and they wanted a different kind of story. They wanted a different kind of character. They wanted different types of storytelling. They wanted unique frames of filmmaking. They wanted different camera shots. They wanted different perspectives. They wanted a whole different experience. And Hollywood, because they were afraid of failure, what they did was hold on to this to the point where they were on the brink of bankruptcy. And it took independent filmmakers like the late Tom Laughlin to go out here and make the classic film Born Losers, which is the first blockbuster. It wasn't a Hollywood blockbuster, but it busted the block at independent theaters as this film, which was produced by Tom Laughlin, went out here and became a box office hit. Same thing with Melvin Van Peebles, who made Sweet Sweetback's song. He also was a trailblazer because Hollywood didn't want to make black films. And with Sweet Sweetback, we saw that there was an audience, and it was independent filmmakers like the late Tom Laughlin and Melvin Van Peebles that ushered in a revolution. And then Hollywood started taking risks on great filmmakers like Martin Scorsese and Ridley Scott and many others who ushered in an entire new era of films such as The Godfather, Alien, and many other films. It was these trailblazers who opened the door to filmmaking, and that's what we're seeing. That's what we desperately need right now. We need new kinds of stories. We need new visuals. We need new shots. We need new techniques as related to writing and storytelling. We need to see more multidimensional humanized characters, and we need to see people who can become the heroes that resonate with a new generation of audiences. Yes, superhero movies are cool, and as a lifelong comic fan, I was happy to enjoy many of these films that were a part of a new golden age of the genre, but I really would like to see a lot more balance as related to Hollywood because they have become so addicted to box office that they have forgotten what story is, and the only stories we get these days are either art house crap that are presented at the Oscars and forgotten, or a superhero movie that basically feels artificial and manufactured, and we're not getting any sort of middle, and we really need to get back to that middle if we want to go out here and see the medium of film survive, because just like the medium of comics, what's happening is we don't have people going out here and looking to push creativity outside of the independent scene, and nobody's really looking to tell a different kind of story, and that's really sad because, again, there are lots of great stories out there. I mean, when I wrote All About Marilyn, I think it's a really solid story about a struggling actress that shows you the human side and struggles of black actresses, and I want to do different kinds of stories. I mean, yes, I do fantasy and science fiction sometimes, and supernatural stories, but I want to do other kinds of stories, and I want to see different types of films. I want that rich diversity we got in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. That's what I want to see, different kinds of stories, and it really pains me because I asked the critical question, when's the last time we've seen a comedy? I mean, with all of this social justice and superhero movies, it seems like comedy just doesn't exist anymore. And I remember in the 80s, there were plenty of comedies, and I can't seem to find a comedy from Hollywood. When you look for a new movie, you don't see any comedy whatsoever. And the aftermath of this pandemic and all of the politics that we've had to deal with, I believe the entire world needs a laugh. I mean, people, they really want to just go out here and escape for a minute, but we can't escape because the only escapes we have are superhero movies because Hollywood wants to play it safe. And we don't get any other types of films because these superhero movies, I have to agree with Ridley Scott, they are just absolutely boring, and they're the same thing all the time. I mean, when I look at all of these filmmakers, I can agree with a lot of them as a writer myself, because writing the same story, it gets very boring. And one of the things I do when I'm out here, I say, I don't want to keep writing the same stories over and over. That's why I would switch it up all the time, and I would do things and take risks. Like when I did the vampire novel Eternal Night, I wanted to do something different because, yes, I write Isis and John Haynes and Eaststein supernatural fantasy, but I wanted to go out here and try a different genre of book, a horror novel, to show a different type. I could do a different type of storytelling and take on that challenge. And a couple of years before that, I went out here and did another women's fiction book, The Thetas, and that was another risk for me, writing a book that was entirely made up with women. And again, that was another challenge for me as a straight black man writing about women. And a lot of people, they told me they were surprised that a man could write women so well. But the whole thing is I kept taking on different challenges because I want to go out here and tell different stories. And that's why I'm always looking for a challenge. And that's another reason why I went out here and wrote the Spinsterella trilogy. I wanted to write about a black goth heroine and her journey in the goth subculture. So I'm always looking to try to do different kind of stories. I don't want to just keep doing the same story because it puts you in a rut, and that's what your superhero movies have done to Hollywood. They have put them in a creative rut, and they've put Hollywood in such a creative rut that all we see are really bland superhero movies that feel, again, manufactured, like they're coming off an assembly line, like a Chevrolet Nova or a Chevrolet Citation. And sadly, the quality is starting to feel a lot like those GM X cars in the early 80s, where they had a lot of quality issues. And what was considered to be a car that was supposed to be revolutionary turned out to be a big piece of junk. And that's what a lot of these superhero movies are feeling like, because the screenwriters are burnt out. They don't have that passion for writing because they are told to go out here and manufacture a story instead of going out here and looking to take all sorts of risks and try to do different types of unique things. And that's hurting the entire medium of film, similar to how it's hurting the medium of comics, because people aren't learning a craft. No, all they're learning to do is just go to work, and they're becoming apathetic and indifferent in the work that they're doing. And what we're getting are mediocre film after mediocre film, and these films just are hurting the entire business of movie making. And even a guy like me who has been studying the entertainment business for over 25 years, I understand how this is impacting the overall medium of film, because we're not telling stories about the experiences of people today. Hollywood is not promoting movies that show us the people of today. We're not discovering new stars like we did in the 70s and the 80s, where we created entirely new stars because they were starring in unique and new and different films. No, what we're getting is an aging group of actors putting on superhero costumes, and it's all hurting the business because we're not creating the next group of icons and heroes for the next generation. So when I look at the entire genre of superhero films, it is just impacting Hollywood in an extremely negative fashion. And again, because they're so addicted to billion-dollar box office, they're not thinking about the future of the medium of film. And when they don't think about the future of film, they don't understand that you're keeping yourself from making the next franchise by holding on to aging franchises that the audience is moving on from right now. Now, if you want to try some of my action-packed fantasy fiction on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com, along with my vampire novel, Eternal Night, my sorority novel, The Thetas, my romantic comedy, A Recipe for Success, my screenplay, All About Marilyn, and my TV series scripts for my absolutely fabulous teen sitcom, All About Nikki. You can find all of my work on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it at other online booksellers like Smashwords, the iBookstore, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and even retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you'd like to see me make more videos about the entertainment industry, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, or my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback, John Haynes at Death's Door. The man who rules the world takes on the Greek god of death in this action-packed John Haynes series adventure. Pick up your copy of John Haynes at Death's Door at Amazon.com and other online booksellers everywhere.